Parents of young children, we think sometimes it inconveniences us that the young believers are upset that maybe they don't have their meal or that they're crying because of the loud auditorium or because of the takbirat. But wallahi al-azim, it's an absolute blessing to have them here. And it's an absolute blessing to have so many mothers and fathers in the building, alhamdulillah. يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Verily Allah reminds us in the Quran, in His most holy book, O those of you who have iman in your hearts, be mindful of Allah. Be mindful of Him in a way that befits His majesty, and do not die in any other state except being in total submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognizing the truth of La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, another season of Eid, another season of celebration, but also another season of immense istighfar and tawbah, or returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Indeed, God does not burden any person in the fara'id, in their deen, with more than that they can handle. Everything that Allah puts an obligation upon us is something that is doable for all of us. لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. Any good that the soul earns, it's for its own benefit. And any evil that the soul acquires is at its own loss. And it is in this light that we remind ourselves that today we are in as hedonistic of an era as previous prophets or previous peoples. Today, just like the people before us and others before them, we are combating between following our pleasures, the age of following our passions, the age of coveting as much material wealth for ourselves, in comparison to the characteristics of the prophets alayhimus salatu wassalam. May Allah be pleased with them. So our soul is being tugged in two directions. To give into this dunya, to give into myself, to give into my whims and my desires and my passions, or to be principled in my character. Who am I going to follow? The path of the shaitan or the path of the anbiya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid before us? And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a beautiful example in our forefather Ibrahim, where he was tempted to give into his doubts, to give into himself, to give into the love of the dunya manifested in the love of his son over the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And indeed, he cast the devil away. He cast the devil away and allowed himself to embrace with full certainty the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he had the encouragement of his son. Many fathers, many mothers complain that children aren't respectful or obedient to their children. Well, maybe we're not like Sayyidina Hajar. Maybe we're not like Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Maybe if we lived up to such a prophetic example as being a great example of a man, a great example of a woman, then maybe our children would follow us blindly as Sayyidina Ibrahim had with his son Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wassalam. So we have Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam being tempted by the devil, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the courage and gave him the iman to withstand such a temptation. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about him? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Salamun ala Ibrahim. كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the entire creation, informs all of creation that upon Ibrahim, the salam of Allah is, Allah sends His peace and blessings upon him. And he is from the people who have been greatly rewarded by God Almighty. And he is indeed amongst those who are the nearest of believers. The people who has Allah, of the people who have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the core of their existence. But again, through the story of Ibrahim, we are reminded that through the beauty of their own patience, and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were rewarded with great openings, and they were elevated in status for many generations of human beings to remember them. Who can go around the earth and not hear about the story or the legacy of Sayyidina Ibrahim? Who amongst the Muslims does not remember him, amongst the Christians and amongst the Jews, and even amongst the non-monotheistic religions? وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فإنه الغفور الرحيم. Ibrahim is also lived through our forefather Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. Musa alayhi salatu wassalam is asked not to sacrifice his son. This is a more relatable example. Ibrahim was asked to sacrifice his son. And I understand it if many of us are unwilling to do so. But Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was asked to sacrifice a comfort. In the Quran, Allah asks him, what is that in your hand, O Musa? Musa, what is it that you have in your hand? And he simply says, it is my staff. I lean on it, I move my sheep, and I use it for support, and it has other uses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands him immediately, Alqiha, throw it, O Moses. Musa, throw your staff. Give it up. Give it up. I'm not going to tell you why. But listen to the command of your Lord. Give it up. Such a small sacrifice. Such a small thing. A walking stick. Ibrahim was asked to sacrifice his son. Musa was asked to toss his walking stick. And he was given the status of messenger. He was given the status of a messenger, of a Nabi, of a Rasul. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? وَلَقَدْ مَنَّنَّا عَلَى مُوسَى وَهَارُونَ. Indeed, we have given abundance to Moses and to Harun. وَنَجَّيْنَاهُمَا وَقَوْمَهُمَا مِنَ الْكَرْبِ الْعَظِيمِ. And we rescued them. Look at all of the miracles that come to Moses, and that come to Harun, and that come to the people around them. Not only does Musa give miracles, not only does Harun get miracles, not only are they given the status of prophethood, but the people who were wrongful, deceitful, disobeying of Allah that were around them also received reward. They also received salvation. This is what happens when the mu'min, when the believer follows the example of the prophets over the example of the dunya. The example of Allah and His messengers over the example of the shaitan. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed millions of Muslims today and yesterday to be in Mecca right now, calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the Temple Mount, calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, informing Him, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Ya Allah, here we are for you. Here we are to serve you. Here we come, Ya Allah, giving up our small sacrifices, giving up our vacations, giving up a little bit of money so that I can fulfill an obligation, giving up a little bit of time, enjoying my luxuries and my chill moments to be with you, O Allah, in the heat of the desert. So when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such moments, we ask Him for forgiveness. The dua of Sayyidina Adam, إِنَّا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمُنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. We ask Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O Allah, we've wronged ourselves, we've oppressed ourselves, and we ask that you forgive us and have mercy upon us. And if you don't, O Allah, surely we are the ones who lose. Surely we are the losers. And we remind ourselves by the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, my prayer, my life, my sacrifice, and all that I possess are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, Allah calls us to make small sacrifices. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises us that if we have the patience to endure just a little bit of pain, this temporary pain in this dunya, then we are rewarded with eternity everlasting. And for that is the great promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for that is our following of the prophets alayhi salatu wassalam, namely Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So for after every difficulty that we face in this life, Allah promises us ease. For every beauty, there's a matched pain. And for every matched pain, there's a matched beauty. This is the dunya that Allah has created us in. And when we leave it, insha'Allah ta'ala, we will only experience beauty everlasting. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم تقبل الله منا ومنكم. May Allah accept my good deeds and your good deeds. May Allah accept all of our prayers, our fasts, our adhkar, our recitation of the Quran, and our commitment to coming out here today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak ala Muhammadin fil awwaleen wa fil akhirin wa fil mala'i al-a'la ila yawm al-din. Allahumma ya Allah, bijahi asma'ika wa sifatik ya arhamar rahimin, ya akram al-akramin, ya ghafur ya rahim, ya sami'u ya mujib, ya tawwab ya afu ya kareem. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridaka رضاك يا الله، رضاك يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك من فضلك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وكن حيث كنا إنك أنت اللطيف الخبير. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب مجيب الدعوات. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Have a blessed Eid, everybody. A blessed week, a blessed time with your families. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.